Ibrahim Traoré felt the metallic coldness of the gun he had tucked into his chest in a modest military barracks. Disguised as an ordinary soldier, he had spent 4 days in Burkina Faso's elite 3rd Commando Brigade. In the darkness of the barracks, while the other soldiers were asleep, he heard whispers, "The time is approaching to overthrow Traoré. Lieutenant Colonel Zungrana has prepared all the units." Another voice replied, "We need to get rid of old-style leaders. France needs leaders who will work with us." Traoré held his breath. His suspicions were confirmed, a coup was being planned in his own army, and no one knew that the person lying among them was the head of state. When he quietly sat up and turned on his flashlight, everyone in the barracks froze in shock. "I've listened to all of you," he said in a calm voice. "Now I'll show you who I am." Is it possible to unite 54 countries with very different economic structures under a single currency? The 5 soldiers in the barracks suddenly rose up and looked at the silhouette before them. When the flashlight beams illuminated Traoré's face, the soldiers planning the betrayal were horrified. "And Mr. President?" stammered Lieutenant Moussa Diarra, blinking his eyes. "This is impossible." Just a week after the interview, the first results began to emerge. Traoré slowly pulled out his Burkina Faso presidential ID from the pocket of his military camouflage and held it in front of them. "Yes, Lieutenant. I am the President and Commander of the Armed Forces, Ibrahim Traoré." The increase in the dinar's value was being watched live on large screens set up in public squares. The tension in the barracks was palpable. Some of the soldiers tried to reach for their weapons in panic, but Traoré's hand was quicker. He drew his gun but did not fire. "Don't move," he warned. "I declare all of you under arrest. You will be tried for treason and planning a coup." Traoré immediately convened the African Union Security Council. One soldier spoke with courage, "Mr. President, this must be a misunderstanding. Our digital security teams, with the help of Russian and Chinese experts, are protecting our systems." "A misunderstanding?" said Traoré with a bitter smile. "I've been among you for 4 days. I've seen everything, heard everything. The rotten food given to soldiers. The ammunition stolen from the weapons depots. The secret meetings with French agents. And now, the final preparations for a coup planned against your own commander. His decisions to nationalize gold mines, exit the CFA franc, and close French bases made him a hero on the continent." Rapid footsteps were heard from outside the barracks. The door opened, and Traoré's most trusted Special Forces unit entered. The president had planned the operation in advance. He had waited precisely for the night when the coup plan would be discussed, then intervened. "Take them all," Traoré ordered. "Prepare them for interrogation. I want to know who is involved. But be careful, this is just the tip of the iceberg. For the first time in centuries, Africa is fully controlling its own resources." As the soldiers were being taken away, Lieutenant Diarra looked into the president's eyes one last time. "Why, Mr. President? Why didn't you trust your own soldiers and felt the need for such a deception?" "The colonial era is over," said Traoré determinedly. Traoré responded, "Because dangers that a leader cannot see do not escape the eye of a soldier. I didn't want to be a president who just sits in a chair reading reports. I wanted to know the real condition of my army, the real thoughts of my soldiers." 2 days later, Ibrahim Traoré gave an exclusive interview to CNN. Half an hour later, in a special interrogation room at the Burkina Faso military headquarters, Traoré was interrogating the 5 captured soldiers. Only his most trusted defense minister General Kassim Koulibaly and intelligence chief Aminata Zerbo were present in the room. "Tell me," said Traoré in a calm voice. "When did this coup plan begin?" "Incredible success, Ibrahim," said Dr. Nkosi. Lieutenant Diarra, with his head bowed, was answering, 3 months ago, Lieutenant Colonel Zungrana contacted us. After returning from his training in France. He told us that the country was becoming alienated from the West, that your policies were ruining our economy. He said change was needed to repair relations with our French friends. This is just the first step, Dr. Nkosi." "French friends?" asked Traoré, narrowing his eyes. "Who are you talking about? There may be more provocations, more coup attempts. Colonel Laurent from the French Embassy and DGSE agent Dumont. They provided us with financial support. Our salaries were increased. They promised to take care of our families." He keeps checking his phone. Traoré, controlling his anger, continued, "How many people are involved in this conspiracy?" Aminata quickly scanned these names on her computer. Diarra hesitated, then answered, 20 officers, about 200 soldiers. But only in the 3rd Brigade in Ouagadougou. Critical areas were identified for the coup: the presidential palace, the radio and television station, the airport, the telecommunications center. Banks in Europe and America were competing to increase their dinar reserves. "And when were you going to take action?" Meanwhile, as Traoré had predicted, the African Technology Union was also developing rapidly. 2 days from now, at midnight. According to Operation Plan 1, we would capture you alive and force you to resign. If you resisted, Plan 2 would be activated. Lieutenant Colonel Zungrana has prepared all the units. Traoré understood what he meant. An assassination plan. Officers in his own army were prepared to kill him. General Coulibaly intervened. Mr. President, this is a national security crisis. We must take immediate action. We should arrest all suspicious officers and reorganize the units under trustworthy commanders. Now I'll show you who I am. Intelligence Chief Zerbo also expressed her opinion, and these agents at the French embassy. Despite their diplomatic immunity, this is a clear intervention. They should be expelled. And Mr. President? Traoré thoughtfully nodded his head, then rose from his seat and turned towards the window. Outside, the city of Ouagadougou was still asleep. The people were unaware of how great a danger their country had just averted. Begin the operation immediately, he said in a definitive tone. But quietly. They must not realize that we have discovered the coup attempt. We must capture all suspects simultaneously. No one should escape. Some of the soldiers tried to reach for their weapons in panic, but Traoré's hand was quicker. The defense minister immediately left the room to convey the orders. Traoré turned to the intelligence chief. Zerbo, do you know what else I discovered in these 4 days? He warned. What, Mr. President? You will be tried for treason and planning a coup. The condition of our soldiers is terrible. The food is rotten. Military facilities are neglected. Salaries are not paid regularly. Morale is very low. They hate the commanders who have taken bribes. He took a deep breath. As a leader, I have disappointed them. The ammunition stolen from the weapons depots. Zerbo objected. Mr. President, you have only recently taken office. You cannot solve problems that have persisted for years all at once. His decisions to nationalize gold mines, exit the CFA franc, and close French bases made him a hero on the continent. Perhaps. But now I know, and I will take action. The president had planned the operation in advance. That night, a secret operation was launched. Traoré's most trusted special forces unit simultaneously arrested all the officers and soldiers identified as involved in the coup plan. The operation was conducted so quietly that no one understood what had happened until the next morning. At 8 o'clock in the morning, Traoré addressed the nation. In a radio and television broadcast, he explained what had transpired. People of Burkina Faso, he began his speech, today I speak to you with deep concern and determination. As your president, I swore to protect the sovereignty and independence of our country. I take this duty seriously, even at the cost of my life if necessary. The colonial era is over, said Traoré determinedly. The camera showed a close-up of Traoré's determined face. 4 days ago, disguising my identity, I infiltrated my own army as an ordinary soldier. My aim was to see the true condition of our armed forces firsthand. Unfortunately, what I saw and heard deeply shook me. Half an hour later, in a special interrogation room at the Burkina Faso military headquarters, Traoré was interrogating the 5 captured soldiers. The screen showed images of the arrested officers and seized weapons. Some officers and soldiers supported by external powers were planning to overthrow our democratically elected government. In collaboration with French intelligence, they wanted to return our country to a colonial order. Incredible success, Ibrahim, said Dr. Nkosi. Traoré's voice grew stronger. We have uncovered this treasonous plan and handed all those responsible over to justice. The independence of Burkina Faso is not negotiable. Our sovereignty is not for sale. Lieutenant Colonel Zungrana has prepared all the units. The screen now showed angry crowds beginning to gather in front of the French embassy. The people, having heard the news, had taken to the streets. My message to France today is clear: the era of interference in our internal affairs is over. Your efforts to destabilize our country are no longer acceptable. I invite the 2 agents in your embassy, Colonel Laurent and Agent Dumont, to leave our country within 24 hours. We have decided to reassess our diplomatic relations. Now I'll show you who I am. Traoré paused briefly, then continued. But my speech today is not just about external powers. We must also face the problems in our own army. The living conditions of our soldiers are at an unacceptable level. Traoré thoughtfully nodded his head, then rose from his seat and turned towards the window. Outside, the city of Ouagadougou was still asleep. The food is inadequate. I am launching a comprehensive reform program to solve these problems. But quietly. The screen showed images of poor conditions in different military barracks, photographs Traoré had secretly taken. The assets of all commanders will be examined. Those who have engaged in corruption will be punished. The military budget will be used for the real needs of soldiers. Barracks will be renovated, salaries will be increased, and training programs will be strengthened. Traoré turned to the intelligence chief. Zerbo, do you know what else I discovered in these 4 days? Traoré moved even closer to the camera. Our army should be an institution that our people can be proud of. The betrayal of a small minority cannot taint our entire armed forces. Together with our patriotic soldiers, we will build a stronger and more loyal army. The food is rotten. When his speech ended, a nationwide debate had begun. Social media was discussing Traoré's bold move. Many applauded their leader who had risked his own life to save the country. Others argued that the presence of so much corruption and betrayal in the army showed the weakness of the administration. 4 days later, Traoré returned to the barracks of the 3rd Commando Brigade, this time in his official head of state uniform. He stood before the soldiers. Most were still in shock. Beside him was the newly appointed brigade commander, Colonel Sawadogo. My brothers, he began his speech. I do not apologize for the 4 days I spent among you. This was something a leader had to do. But I want you to know this, you are not just soldiers. You are the sons of Burkina Faso, and just as a father wants to know his children, I wanted to know you. That night, a secret operation was launched. The entire barracks was listening in silence. I have seen that most of you are patriotic, honest people. You do your duty even under difficult conditions. However, the corruption in our system has led some of you astray. The allure of money and power has overshadowed loyalty to the homeland. As your president, I swore to protect the sovereignty and independence of our country. He continued, from today, a new era begins under the leadership of Colonel Sawadogo. Your salaries will be increased by 50%. The barracks will be renovated. New housing will be built for your families. Better training and equipment will be provided. But in return, I expect complete loyalty and dedication from you. Half an hour later, in a special interrogation room at the Burkina Faso military headquarters, Traoré was interrogating the 5 captured soldiers. Traoré, looking into the eyes of his soldiers, continued to speak. Some of you may ask me, why didn't you trust us? My answer is this: trust is earned. And now, after these challenging days, it is time to rebuild trust in each other. I believe in you. You believe in me. He told us that the country was becoming alienated from the West, that your policies were ruining our economy. That day, Traoré had not only prevented a coup attempt but had also sown the seeds of a fundamental change in his army. 2 weeks later, the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced that they were imposing sanctions on Burkina Faso. Economic aid was stopped, and trade restrictions were introduced. But Traoré had a plan for this as well. He signed new trade agreements with Russia and China. He sought support from African Union countries. And most importantly, he completely nationalized Burkina Faso's gold mines. Now all revenue would go directly to the state treasury. Although these decisions created economic hardships in the short term, the people of Burkina Faso stood behind their leader. Traoré was meeting with the public in a different city each week, explaining his decisions and vision. The military reform program was also progressing rapidly. Within 3 months, the salary system in the army was renewed, all commanders were required to declare their assets, barracks were renovated, and training programs were strengthened. 6 months later, during an international military exercise, a Russian general asked Traoré, "President Traoré, how did you decide to mingle among your soldiers?" This was a very risky move. Aminata quickly scanned these names on her computer. Traoré smiled, "General, the biggest mistake a leader can make is to live detached from reality. You cannot govern the country from the comfort of a palace with advisors' reports. You must truly know your people and your soldiers." Banks in Europe and America were competing to increase their dinar reserves. But they could have recognized you. You could have been killed. Technology centers established in different regions of the continent had begun processing rare elements and producing indigenous technology. Yes, that was a risk. But every risk is worth taking for Burkina Faso. My life is not more valuable than the independence of my country and the welfare of my people. A year ago, we realized a dream that seemed impossible, he said, with graphs showing the rise of the dinar on the screen behind him. This answer impressed not only the Russian general but all international observers. A new understanding of leadership was being born in Africa. A year later, the Burkina Faso army was being shown in international assessments as one of Africa's most disciplined and professional armies. Corruption had been greatly reduced, military capacity had been increased, and loyalty and patriotism had been reinstated at the center of army culture. Traoré initiated the tradition of serving as an ordinary soldier in a different military unit for 1 week every anniversary. This became both a symbol of his leadership style and ensured that the army remained constantly vigilant. 5 years later, when he announced his retirement, he was leaving behind a loyal army and a strong state. In his farewell speech, he said, "The true legacy of a leader is what he leaves behind after leaving office. I am leaving a Burkina Faso that is loyal to its own people and values. A country that refuses to be a puppet of external powers. And most importantly, a society with a bond of trust between its leaders and its people." At the end of the summit, African leaders also approved Traoré's next vision, the African Space Agency. Ibrahim Traoré's story redefined the concept of leadership not only in Burkina Faso but throughout Africa. A leader who chose to be among the people, not at the center of power. A commander who risked his own life to save his country. And most importantly, a statesman who boldly took action to solve the problems he saw. Today, at the Burkina Faso Military Academy, Traoré's 4-day secret operation is taught to all military students. The name of the course, Leadership and Courage, the Legacy of President Traoré. Now, according to our agreement, the new government will renew all agreements with French companies and stop the establishment of the Russian military base.